I never thought I'd be one of those people who posted on Reddit for advice or to vent, but here I am, completely blindsided, sitting on the edge of my bed at 2:14 a.m. with my fiancé asleep in the next room, and my world flipped sideways because of one text message I wasn't supposed to see. My name's Asher, I'm 29 years old, and I'm getting married in exactly 2 weeks. Or, I was. That part is a little fuzzy right now. I've always been the dependable one in my family. You know the type? Always shows up on time, helps carry heavy stuff during the holidays, remembers birthdays, and listens to everyone's drama without adding any of my own. I'm not flashy. I'm not the loud one. I'm not the golden child either. That would be my older sister, Morgan, 31, surgically attached to her phone, and always armed with some thinly veiled insult wrapped in a compliment. "You're so brave for proposing with that ring," she said at our engagement dinner, in front of my future in-laws. That sort of person. Morgan's always had a way of turning everything into a performance, especially when there's family around. She's the queen of the backhanded remark and the tearful confession that conveniently makes her the victim. And the worst part? My parents eat it up. Every time. My mom calls her passionate, and my dad just shrugs and says, "That's how Morgan is, you know that." Me? I was the quiet achiever. Got a decent job in IT straight out of college, bought a condo at 26, paid off my car, started a little side business designing security systems. Nothing glamorous, but solid. Steady. I've always tried to do the right thing, maybe to a fault. I don't stir the pot. I don't start fights. But I think people confuse that with weakness. And after tonight, I'm starting to see just how many of them do. The woman I was supposed to marry, Sophie, came into my life 3 years ago. Sweet, grounded, funny in a dry, sarcastic way that caught me off guard on our second date. She worked in museum curation and had this habit of organizing the condiments in my fridge by era, as if the ketchup bottle was some kind of ancient relic. I fell hard. She made me feel seen in a way I didn't even realize I needed. Our wedding was supposed to be small but elegant. Nothing insane, no doves or castles or weird destination theme. Just close friends and family. A vineyard we found about an hour outside the city, and Sophie in that dress she cried over when she tried it on. I remember standing behind her in the boutique mirror, her hands covering her mouth, and thinking, this is it. This is the person I'm building the rest of my life with. And I believed that. I really did. Until tonight. But before I get to the text, and believe me, we'll get there, I should probably explain how we got to this weird, slippery edge of a cliff that I'm teetering on right now. It started, like most of my problems, with Morgan. See, when we got engaged, there was this unspoken tension that started to creep in from the edges of every family interaction. Nothing blatant at first, just little things. Morgan joking that I was finally catching up, or asking Sophie loudly at brunch if she ever worried about Asher being too predictable. My mom would nudge her and tell her to stop, but she'd always roll her eyes and say, "I'm kidding. Gosh, you guys are so sensitive." Sophie laughed it off for a while. She'd squeeze my hand under the table or shoot me a look that said, "It's fine, let it go." And I did, because that's what I do. Then came the wedding planning. Morgan, of course, offered to help, which really meant she wanted to control everything and make it about her. She insisted we include her daughter as a flower girl, even though Sophie's niece was already doing it. When we gently said no, Morgan got tearful and accused us of excluding her family. My mom took her side, of course, said it would mean a lot if we just let Morgan have this. Then she criticized the venue. "Too rustic," she said. "Don't you want something more elegant?" Then the invitations. Kind of bland, right? She tried to get Sophie to change her dress after she saw a photo, saying it washed her out. Sophie was furious, but Morgan just laughed it off again. "It's just my opinion. You don't have to take it so personally." It was exhausting, and it was all the time. Group chats became war zones. My mom would chime in to defend Morgan, and when I pushed back, I'd get a call from my dad saying, "Just let her have a few things, Asher. She's going through a lot." What exactly Morgan was going through was never clarified. As far as I could tell, she was still in the same marketing job she'd had for years, still living in that suburban McMansion her ex left her, still very invested in making herself the center of attention at every possible opportunity. Things hit a weird high point when she insisted on throwing us an engagement party at her house. She said it would be just family and a few close friends, and Sophie reluctantly agreed after some pressure from my mom. It was a disaster. Morgan gave a toast halfway through that sounded more like a TED talk about being single and independent. She actually said, "Sophie, if you ever need a break from all of Asher's routines, just call me. I'll sneak you out." Everyone laughed. I smiled through it. Sophie didn't. She avoided Morgan the rest of the night. After that, I told my mom, very directly, that Morgan needed to step back. That Sophie and I had everything under control, and we didn't need her constant input. My mom sounded wounded. "She's your sister, Asher. She's just excited for you." But it didn't feel like excitement. It felt like sabotage wrapped in sarcasm. We scaled back, stopped inviting Morgan to planning meetings, took her out of the group chat. She noticed, obviously, and made some passive-aggressive Facebook posts about being excluded by people you love. Whatever. I let it go. I told myself it was almost over. Just make it through the next few weeks, and then it'll be done. And then tonight happened. Sophie had gone to bed early. She was exhausted, had a long day setting up last-minute details with the florist. I was lying on the couch, mindlessly scrolling my phone, half watching an old rerun of The Office, when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Now, I'm not the type to snoop. I never have been. But the screen lit up, and the message preview was just odd. It was from Morgan, and it said, "Don't forget, no second thoughts. He's safe." Boring. That's what you wanted, remember? I stared at it for a long second, just long enough for the phone to dim again. Then I picked it up. I didn't even hesitate. And what I found cracked something wide open in me that I don't know if I can put back together. That's where things start to unravel. Fast. I sat there on the couch for a long time, Sophie's phone heavy in my hand, staring at that single text from Morgan like it was some cursed artifact that had the power to unravel everything I thought I knew. My thumb hovered over the screen. I wasn't going to open her phone, I told myself. I respected her privacy. I trusted her. I loved her. But something inside me, something quiet and cold and sharp, told me that if I didn't look now, I'd never forgive myself. So I tapped the screen, unlocked it with the code I knew, her birthday, and opened the thread with Morgan. It wasn't one message. It was a whole conversation. Weeks long. At first, it was just Morgan doing what Morgan does. Mocking, poking, always trying to stir something. "You sure you want to do this? A wedding feels so final, you know?" Then another one. "Asher's sweet, but don't you think it's all a little safe? You used to dream bigger." And Sophie? She didn't push back. She didn't defend me. She agreed. "I know. Sometimes I think I just picked the safe choice," she wrote back. "He'll never leave. He's stable. It's just not exciting, you know?" My heart dropped. There were more. So many more. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if I'd just moved to Boston instead?" Morgan, all the time. "But hey, you'd never get the kind of devotion Asher gives you from someone exciting. You'd have to earn it." Sophie, yeah. It's like being loved by a golden retriever. Sweet, loyal, always there. But sometimes I just want to scream. She didn't mean for me to read that. I know she didn't. But I did. And it felt like someone had poured acid down the back of my throat. I didn't read everything. I couldn't. I closed the app, locked the phone, and just sat there. Breathing. Or trying to. I could still hear her soft breathing from the bedroom. The woman I'd been planning a future with. The woman who smiled at me this morning and asked if I wanted waffles or eggs. And all I could think about was how I had been so careful, so intentional. Every step of our relationship had been slow, thoughtful, real. I thought we had built something unshakable. But apparently, I was just the safe choice. And suddenly, everything started clicking into place. The distant looks when we went to dinner with my friends. The hesitation in her voice when we were doing the seating chart. The fact that she hadn't posted about the engagement in over a month, even though she used to update her Instagram story like it was a second job. I'd been writing it off as stress, nerves, pressure from Morgan. But maybe I was just ignoring the truth because it was easier than facing it. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, playing the messages over in my head, wondering what else I'd missed. And by the time the sun rose, I had made two decisions. 1, I wasn't going to say anything. Not yet. 2, I was going to figure out exactly how deep this went. The next week was a blur, but I played my part like an Oscar-winning actor. Smiles, small talk, tastings with the caterer, final suit fitting. I kept waiting for Sophie to sense something in me, but she never did. Maybe that's what hurt the most. That I could be shattering inside, and she couldn't even see it. Meanwhile, Morgan got bolder. She came to our apartment under the guise of dropping off gifts for the bridesmaids and barely made eye contact with me. At one point, when Sophie was in the bathroom, Morgan stood in the kitchen with a glass of wine and looked me up and down. "You look tired, Ash," she said. "Been a busy week," I replied calmly. She sipped her wine. "Still time to back out, you know. You guys could just elope and spare everyone the drama." I didn't blink. Why would there be drama? She smirked. "There's always drama. It just hasn't exploded yet." Then Sophie came back into the room, and Morgan instantly transformed, laughing, hugging, talking about color palettes like she hadn't just subtly threatened my peace of mind 30 seconds earlier. It was like watching someone switch masks in real time. A few days later, I started doing some digging. I don't like being sneaky. I've never been that guy, but something inside me needed clarity. I wasn't going to accuse Sophie of anything unless I had the full picture. I remembered that she used to leave her iPad in the office sometimes, and it was synced to her messages. One night when she went out for a final dress check with her maid of honor, I checked, and I found it. Not cheating. Not quite. But messages to an ex-Dylan. Apparently, Dylan was the what-if guy, the one she never quite got over. The texts were sporadic but recent, months ago, a few weeks ago, and even one just a week back. Nothing outright romantic. Just loaded. Stuff like, "Ever think about that summer in Vermont? You always knew how to make me laugh. Still do. And worst of all, if I ever said I didn't love you, I was lying." That one gutted me. Because the reply? I know. No follow-up. No clarification. Just those two words that hung in the air like poison. I sat back in the chair and just stared at the screen. I wasn't angry yet. Not furious. Just hollow. Like everything I had invested in was suddenly made of smoke. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know what I was dealing with. So I kept going. And that's when I saw something else. A group chat, titled The Real Bridal Party. Not the one I was in. Not the one with Sophie, her maid of honor, and my mom. This one had Morgan, her two best friends. Sophie's cousin, who I barely knew, and Sophie, and they were ripping me apart. Screenshots of texts I had sent Sophie about the venue. Comments about my wardrobe choices. Even a photo of me asleep on the couch with the caption, "This is the man I'm marrying." Laughter emojis. Morgan, you can still fake a honeymoon then ghost him. Men like that bounce back fast. Sophie, he'd probably just build a spreadsheet to process the emotions LOL. Morgan, and blog about it. Sophie, don't tempt me. That was the moment I felt something break. A crack deep in my chest, followed by a numbness that spread like frost across every part of me. They didn't just see me as boring. They saw me as a joke. And my sister was helping. That was the turning point. That was when something inside me, something that had always been quiet and soft and patient, stood up. No more. I closed the iPad, locked it, put it right back where it was. Then I sat on the couch, stared out the window into the city night, and began to think. Really think. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to ask why. I was going to do something. And the funny thing was, none of them even noticed the change. Not Sophie, who kissed my cheek the next morning like nothing had happened. Not Morgan, who texted me later that day with a meme about wedding stress. Not my mom, who asked if I'd considered letting Morgan say a few words during the ceremony. No one saw it, but something had shifted in me. And what I was planning, well, let's just say, it's not the kind of revenge you shout about. It's the kind you prepare for. The kind that makes people wish they'd just left you alone. It's strange how calm you can feel when everything inside you is falling apart. In the days after I read those texts, I moved through the world like a shadow of myself. I still went to work, still answered emails, still took client calls, but it felt like I was watching someone else live my life, like my brain had temporarily gone into some kind of survival autopilot. The worst part was pretending everything was fine, smiling when Sophie asked what kind of napkins we should use, nodding along when my mom brought up the ceremony readings again, pretending not to notice when Morgan made yet another dig about how serious I always looked. I wasn't serious. I was shattered. The weight of knowing that the woman I was about to marry saw me as some boring consolation prize, someone to settle for, someone safe, was heavier than I expected. It wasn't even about her ex, or the texts with Morgan, or the mocking messages in the group chat. It was the realization that I had loved someone so completely, so honestly, and she had never once looked at me the same way. And it wasn't just her. It was my whole family. Morgan's constant jabs had always grated on me, but now I saw them for what they really were, little reminders of my place in the family food chain. The one they leaned on but never celebrated. The fixer, the helper, the background character in everyone else's drama. My parents never said it out loud, but they always seemed to believe Morgan needed more. More attention, more support, more patience, more understanding. And I was fine. I could handle things. I didn't need the spotlight. But I did. Or maybe I just needed someone to see me, really see me, and not treat my kindness like a doormat. So, yeah, I hit rock bottom. I started staying late at the office, even when I didn't need to. I sat in the parking lot some nights, just staring at the steering wheel. I stopped responding to group chats, stopped answering calls that weren't essential. I told Sophie I was just wedding stressed, and she believed it. Or maybe she didn't care enough to question it. And one night, about a week before the wedding, I cracked. I drove to a park we used to visit early on in our relationship, one of those quiet places with a view of the river and old wooden benches facing the skyline. I sat there for almost 2 hours, trying to cry, trying to scream, trying to do something, but nothing came out. Just silence. Just stillness. I felt completely alone in a life I had spent years building. I thought about calling someone. Not Morgan, obviously. Not my parents. And not Sophie. I thought about my friend Caleb, the one guy I'd stayed close to since college. We hadn't talked as much recently. Life gets in the way, but he had always been the kind of friend who didn't need a reason to show up. I scrolled through my contacts, thumb hovering over his name. And for once, I hit call. He picked up on the third ring. Asher? Dude, you all right? I don't know why, but the sound of his voice, steady, familiar, was what finally cracked the dam. I didn't give him the full story. Not yet. Just told him I was going through something, that things with Sophie weren't what I thought, and that I needed a breather. Caleb didn't push. He just listened. Offered to meet up the next day. Told me his couch was always open. The next morning, I took him up on that. I told Sophie I had a surprise errand, something about a tux issue. She barely looked up from her phone. That weekend, I slept on Caleb's couch and told him everything. The texts, the group chat, the feeling that I was a guest star in my own relationship. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to talk me down. When I finished, he just looked at me and said, "So what are you going to do about it?" I had no idea, but I knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I wasn't going to be the passive, nice guy who smiled through being disrespected. And I wasn't going to marry someone who saw me as a backup plan. That weekend became a turning point. I started going through every part of my life with fresh eyes. Not just the relationship, but everything. The condo? Still under my name alone. Good. The wedding? 90% funded by me. Sophie's parents had offered to help, but I'd taken the lead because I thought it was my responsibility. Turns out, that gave me more leverage than I realized. My side business, still thriving. I'd been designing custom home security systems for wealthier clients, referrals mostly, and I had 3 contracts lined up for after the wedding, which meant if I walked away from this whole mess, I'd be financially fine. And then there was my peace of mind. That part was harder to rebuild. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Just putting my thoughts down, every day, no filter. Some of it was angry. Some of it was heartbreaking. But it helped me see my emotions clearly, like sorting puzzle pieces. I also called my Aunt May, my dad's sister. She was always the black sheep of the family. Didn't show up to every holiday. Lived out west. But she had this calm wisdom to her, and she'd always had a soft spot for me. We talked for over an hour. She said, "You've been carrying everyone else's weight your whole life, Asher. Maybe it's time to stop apologizing for wanting something real." That stuck with me. So I stopped apologizing. I told Caleb I was postponing the wedding. Didn't say canceled, not yet, but I was taking a step back. He offered to help with whatever I needed. Then I started reaching out to vendors. Quietly. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. But I asked questions. Reschedule policies. Refund options. Transfer possibilities. I spoke to the venue coordinator, a woman named Talia who, to my surprise, remembered me by name. "Asher? Oh, you're the polite groom. Not like the other one." I raised an eyebrow. "Other one?" She paused, then laughed. "Sorry, just a joke. Your fiancé was in a couple days ago. With her friend. They were looking at changing the layout again. Said you probably wouldn't mind." I didn't say anything. Just thanked her and hung up. But that cemented it. Sophia checked out. She was planning things without me now. Probably had been for a while. And yet, I didn't blow up. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because this wasn't going to be a dramatic fight. This was going to be a decision. One I made on my terms. The next few days, I quietly moved some of my valuables out of the apartment. Nothing obvious. Just things that mattered. Sentimental stuff, personal files, a couple hard drives. I boxed up old letters from my grandmother, a watch my grandfather left me, and the external drive with my business records. Then I started working on something I hadn't touched in years, a portfolio. I'd always wanted to open a proper office for my side business. Take on more contracts. Maybe hire someone part-time. I had the skills. I had the reputation. What I didn't have was the push. Now I did. I updated my website, reached out to a designer friend, booked a meeting with a lawyer to form an LLC. And the more I did, the more I started to feel like myself again. Not the Asher who got steamrolled at family dinners or made to feel like an afterthought in his own relationship, but the real me. The one who built something from the ground up. The one who showed up for people not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And with every step forward, I got clearer. I wasn't going to let this wedding happen. Not because I was afraid. Not because I was heartbroken. But because I finally understood that my life didn't start with her. And it definitely wouldn't end with her either. I still hadn't told Sophie. I still hadn't told my family. But I had a plan now. And once it was in motion, they wouldn't see it coming. Not Morgan. Not Sophie. Not any of them. They thought I was the safe one. The boring one. The one who would never walk away. But they forgot something important. Quiet doesn't mean weak. And now? Now I was done being quiet. Once I made the decision to walk away from the wedding, everything inside me started to settle. Not in a peaceful way. More like the way floodwaters slowly recede after a storm, leaving behind debris and wreckage. I wasn't okay yet. I wasn't whole. But I was awake. And for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying anyone else's story. I was finally writing my own. But I wasn't going to leave quietly. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the way they laughed at me. I didn't want an explosion. I wanted something quiet, smart, deliberate, something that would stick. That they'd remember. I started with Sophie. Not directly. Not yet. But I began weaving my exit plan in the background like I was setting up a chess endgame. Slow, silent, piece by piece. First, I visited the venue alone. I requested a private appointment with Talia, the coordinator, and told her I needed to make a few changes. I brought coffee. I smiled. I even joked about last-minute nerves. And then I got serious. I need to know what happens if the groom pulls out, I said. She blinked. I'm sorry. Hypothetically, what are the legalities if I decide not to go through with it? She hesitated. Well, if it's within 72 hours, you lose your deposit. But beyond that, it's your event. If your name's on the contract, which it is, you control the reservation. I nodded slowly. Good. One more question. Can I move the date without notifying anyone else on the guest list? Talia blinked again. You can, yes. But I would strongly advise. I won't cause trouble, I said, cutting her off gently. I just need some time. And I may need to use this space for something else. She didn't ask. She just nodded. Then I called the caterer. Same deal. I asked about cancellations, rescheduling, even substituting a private dinner event for the full wedding menu. They were confused, but polite. I paid a small fee to put a flexible hold on the original menu while I considered downscaling. Downscaling. What a funny word. Then came the photographer, DJ, florist. Each time, I played the same card. Slight change. Just checking options. Don't tell anyone. And slowly, I began untying the threads of the wedding that Sophie was so eager to turn into a performance. And she had no idea. She was too busy planning the bachelorette brunch Morgan wanted to host at some overpriced rooftop bar. Too busy updating her Pinterest boards with cake designs and moody modern color schemes. Too busy complaining to her friends about how I was checked out lately and acting weird. Of course I was. I was done pretending. But I wasn't just setting up an escape. I was setting up the reveal. Because revenge? Real revenge? It's not about rage. It's about clarity. And it's about timing. Around this time, I reached out to Caleb again. We met for coffee, neutral ground, a quiet place near his office, and I laid out everything I discovered. The texts, the fake bridal party group chat, the ex-boyfriend messages, the layers of betrayal, the things my own sister had said behind my back. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "You want to nuke them?" Something like that. He raised an eyebrow. You want to burn it all down? I sipped my coffee. No. I want to light a candle. In the middle of their little fantasy. And then walk away while they choke on the smoke. He nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need? I smiled. I didn't need an army. I just needed a few allies. People who knew the truth. People who could confirm the story without turning it into a circus. Caleb was one. My Aunt May was another. I called her the next day, asked if she'd be willing to fly in a few days early. I told her I couldn't explain everything yet, but I needed her there. She didn't hesitate. You tell me where to be and when. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Maya. Maya and I had dated for a while back in college. It ended amicably, different cities, different goals, but we'd stayed in touch now and then. She was a graphic designer now, working freelance. I'd seen her post about freelancing on LinkedIn recently, and it gave me an idea. Hey, I said when she picked up. Weird question. Would you be up for a quick freelance job? Strictly professional. She hesitated. Depends. What kind of job? I need a brochure designed. Looks like a wedding program, but it's not. I'll explain later. Just trust me. It's going to be epic. She laughed. You always did have flair for the dramatic. Only when necessary. I sent her a rough draft that night. Carefully worded, designed like a typical wedding program with flowery fonts and gold trim. But inside, it told a story. My story. Side 1, the wedding timeline. Side 2, the truth. In plain language. Names redacted, but the details were unmistakable. Anonymized screenshots of the worst messages, a brief paragraph titled, What you see isn't always real, and a final message. The groom has decided not to perform today. Thank you for understanding. Maya called me the next morning. Is this real? Every word. And you're giving this out at your wedding? Not at the wedding, I said. Instead of the wedding. She whistled. Damn, you always were the nice guy. What happened? I paused. I finally got tired of being the punchline. The next few days were a blur of careful movement. I printed the brochures under a private label, had them boxed and sent to Caleb's office. Booked a few extra chairs at the vineyard, not for guests, but for witnesses. Aunt May, Maya, a couple close friends who knew just enough to be trusted. Meanwhile, Sophie was spinning in her own little reality bubble. She spent her time complaining about seating charts, arguing with the florist, posting selfies with Morgan captioned bliss and chaos. She didn't notice me pulling away. Or maybe she noticed and just assumed I was stressed, which was true, but not in the way she thought. Then, exactly 3 days before the wedding, I got a call from my mom. Asher, she said, her voice tight. Can we talk? About what? Your sister said you're being difficult, that you're pulling out of things. Is everything okay? I nearly laughed. Mom, I said, Morgan has spent the last 2 months treating this wedding like her own personal spotlight. If anyone's being difficult, it's her. She's just excited. You know how she is. I do. That's the problem. There was a long pause. Are you calling it off? She asked finally. I didn't answer. Not yet. But I could tell the panic was starting to creep in. Good. Because panic makes people sloppy. And I was almost ready. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Sophie and I were supposed to do a quiet dinner together. No phones. No distractions. Just us. Her idea. I agreed. And then I didn't show up. I left my phone at Caleb's. Let it ring. Let the texts pile up. And I watched the clock tick past each minute she waited for me, wondering, maybe for the first time, if something was really wrong. She came home after midnight. I was already in bed. Lights off. Eyes closed. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. The next morning, rehearsal day, she left early. Morgan texted me a series of question marks around 10 a.m. My mom called at noon. I didn't respond to either. Because it was time. Time to stop being the dependable one. Time to stop being their placeholder. Time to show them who I really was. And I had one more move left on the board. One more surprise. Because the wedding was still happening. They just weren't ready for the version they were about to walk into. I woke up on what was supposed to be my wedding day at 6 a.m. sharp. The sky outside was overcast, gray and heavy, like it knew what was coming. I stood in the middle of the condo, surrounded by the remnants of a life that was about to be left behind. Sophie had already gone ahead to the vineyard that morning. She'd stayed at a hotel with her bridal party the night before, probably sipping mimosas, getting her hair done, taking selfies captioned, ready for forever. I made coffee, put on my suit, but not the one I had tailored for the wedding. No, I wore the charcoal gray one I wore to client meetings, clean, crisp, professional. Because today wasn't a wedding. It was a presentation, and I was about to deliver the keynote of my life. By 9 a.m., I arrived at the venue, quiet, early. The vineyard was beautiful in the morning fog. Talia, the venue coordinator, greeted me with a nervous smile. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded. "Just make sure the staff is in position and no one interrupts the usher." She handed me the box. Inside were the custom programs Maya had designed. Elegant, deceptive, brilliant. They looked just like normal wedding brochures. Names in gold script, a timeline of the ceremony, a heartfelt quote on the back. Love doesn't make the world go round. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. But inside was the truth. The middle spread was a cleanly written, concise story, my story, with redacted names but clear timelines, clearly cropped screenshots, the golden retriever text, the "he'll never leave" quote, and a piece of the real bridal party chat with enough context to sting, and a message that read, "To our dear guests, I thank you for showing up today. Unfortunately, this ceremony will not be going forward. I have learned, too late, that love without respect is a performance. That trust is not a gift to be laughed at. And that loyalty, without honesty, is not love at all. I've chosen to walk away, not in anger, but with clarity. May you all choose partners who see you, value you, and don't secretly pity the life they build with you." Asher. Each program was sealed with a ribbon, placed on every guest chair. At exactly 10:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin, Caleb, dressed like a groomsman, started handing them out with a calm smile. People assumed it was part of the event. Most didn't open them right away. But when they did, the ripple began quietly. Soft gasps, confused murmurs. One woman actually clutched her chest and said, "Oh my God." The buzz grew louder as more guests read. My Aunt May stood at the back near the refreshment table, sipping tea like she wasn't watching a social grenade go off. Then Morgan showed up. Late, of course, wearing a ridiculous designer gown that clearly cost more than my entire catering budget. She waltzed in like she was the star of a red carpet event. She smiled, waved, and the second she saw Caleb handing out the programs, her smile dimmed. She grabbed one, opened it, and froze. I was watching from the groom's suite, via security feed. I had paid one of my own clients, an event videographer I worked with professionally, to rig the place with discreet cameras the week before. Not for surveillance, for documentation. Morgan's face turned pale, then red. She spun around and scanned the guests, eyes wild, lips moving as she muttered, What is this? What is this?" She stormed toward Caleb. "Who gave you permission to? Where's Asher?" Caleb smiled calmly. "He'll be out shortly." Sophie entered 10 minutes later, late, glowing, holding her bouquet like a goddess descending. She didn't notice the tension right away. She waved, laughed, posed for a photo with her cousin. But then someone handed her a program. I watched the moment her expression changed. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow. First her eyes narrowed. Then her lips parted slightly. Then her fingers began to tremble. And then, just as she turned to her bridesmaids and said, "What is this?" I stepped out. I didn't wait for her to come to me. I walked straight down the aisle, through the growing crowd, every eye on me. My heart was steady, my hands calm, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. She saw me. Her face broke. "Asher," she started. I held up a hand. "Don't." Morgan was storming toward me, heel clicking like a metronome of fury. "You think this is funny? You embarrassed her. Us. In front of everyone." I turned to her. "No, Morgan. You embarrassed yourselves. I just stopped letting you do it quietly. You are going to regret this," she hissed. I tilted my head. I already did. For years. But not anymore. I turned back to Sophie. "You knew," I said. "About everything. The texts. The ex. The way you talked about me. You didn't just lose love today. You lost respect. You lost me." She shook her head, tears spilling. "I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed, Morgan." I stepped back. "You didn't mean it? You called me a golden retriever, Sophie. You said I was safe. That you picked me like I was some sort of fallback option. I didn't ask for perfect. I asked for honest." She took a step forward. "Please." I raised my voice slightly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This wedding is canceled. The venue has been paid for. Feel free to enjoy the open bar, the music, and the beautiful setting. But there will be no vows. No pretending. Gasps. Whispers. One guy clapped. I don't know who. I didn't care. I walked off the platform and toward the exit, where Caleb and May were waiting. My mom stood near the back, pale and stiff. She didn't say anything. Didn't try to stop me. But Morgan did. You are nothing without people like us, she spat. You'll end up alone. I smiled. Better alone than disrespected. Outside, the sun was starting to push through the clouds. Caleb clapped me on the back. May hugged me. Maya, who had quietly filmed the whole thing from a discreet corner, handed me the camera. Just in case they try to rewrite the story, she said. I nodded. We left together. Drove back to the city. I didn't speak for most of the ride. I didn't need to. The silence was clean. It was mine. The fallout was swift. Morgan went full nuclear. Posted on Facebook about being betrayed by a narcissist brother. Deleted it within hours after the comments weren't going her way. Sophie tried to contact me. Left voicemails. Sent long, teary emails. Even showed up at my condo 2 days later. I didn't answer the door. Eventually, she gave up. My parents didn't say much. My dad sent a 2-line message. You did what you had to do. I hope you find peace. My mom stayed silent. But Caleb? He took me out for wings that Friday night. So, he said, what's next? And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Something better. 3 months later, I opened my own security firm. 6 months after that, I bought an office space. Morgan tried to smear me on social media again. It didn't stick. My clients didn't care. And Sophie? I heard she moved back in with her parents for a while. Her job let her go. She tried to start a wedding consulting side hustle, but couldn't shake the whispers. That brochure made its rounds. People remembered. And me? I rebuilt. Not for revenge. Not for validation. But for the man I always was. Quiet, steady, and finally free. I don't know where Sophie is now. Or Morgan. I don't care. Because I'm not their backup plan. I'm not their safety net. I'm not their punchline. I'm Asher. And I finally stopped apologizing for being the one who never walked away. Until I did.